Welcome back, Cancer. I'm really glad you're here. There's something interesting showing up in your energy today. It feels like someone has been carrying feelings for you much longer than they've admitted, even to themselves. The strange thing is, the more they try to ignore those feelings, the stronger they seem to become. And while they're busy trying to figure out what their heart is telling them, your energy is changing too. You're becoming more magnetic, more confident, more noticed. And for some of you, that may be bringing new possibilities into your life. So if you've been feeling like something is shifting beneath the surface, trust that feeling. Because what I'm seeing in these cards isn't just about love. It's about realization. It's about timing. And it's about someone finally understanding what you truly mean to them. Before we begin, I'd love to ask you something. What is one thing you're hoping to welcome into your life this year? Leave it in the comments along with the number 7. Sometimes the simple act of naming a desire helps us see it more clearly. And who knows? It may be closer than you think. Now, let's see what's coming through for you. Cancer, I keep feeling this very quiet energy around you. Not loud, not dramatic, just persistent. Like someone's heart has been trying to whisper something for a very long time, and they're finally reaching the point where they can no longer pretend they don't hear it. The Moon card is the first thing catching my attention, and it feels like this person has spent a lot of time hiding from their own emotions. Not necessarily hiding from you, hiding from themselves, trying to explain away what they feel, trying to convince themselves that maybe it wasn't that serious. Maybe it was just attraction. Maybe it was just curiosity. Maybe it would pass. But it didn't. In fact, it seems to have grown stronger. The more they tried to move on, the more your energy stayed with them. The more they distracted themselves, the more they found themselves thinking about you when they least expected it. You know those moments when someone is driving home, looking out a window, standing in line somewhere, doing something completely ordinary, and suddenly a person appears in their mind? That's what this feels like. And I keep seeing the 6 of Cups sitting here, almost like a collection of memories scattered across their day. Certain conversations, certain smiles, the way you made them feel, the way they felt understood around you. For some of you, this person may not even realize how often they revisit these memories. It's become almost automatic, like their heart keeps returning to the same place, returning to you. And what's interesting is that these memories don't feel painful. They feel comforting. They feel safe. Almost like this person found something around you that they haven't found in many other places. A sense of emotional home. Oh my God, that's actually the phrase that keeps coming through. Home. Not because Cancer represents a house or a location, but because your presence seems to have created a feeling inside of them that they struggle to find anywhere else. The Lover's card is here as well, and I don't feel this card showing up as a quick romance or a passing connection.
It feels deeper than that.
It feels like someone is beginning to recognize that their feelings have crossed a line they never expected to cross. At first, they may have believed they had complete control over this situation. They may have thought they could keep things casual, keep things logical, keep things contained. But emotions rarely ask for permission before they grow. And now this person is sitting with feelings that have become impossible to ignore. They're noticing how often they think about you. They're noticing how much your opinion matters to them. They're noticing how different you feel compared to other people they've met. And honestly, I think that's making them a little nervous. Because once someone realizes their heart is involved, everything changes. The stakes feel higher. The risks feel bigger. The possibility of rejection feels more real. The possibility of losing you becomes something they don't even want to imagine. The Queen of Cups is creating such a beautiful energy around this reading. I keep getting the feeling that what drew this person toward you wasn't only physical attraction. It was the emotional connection. The way you listen. The way you understand things that other people miss. The way you can sense what someone is feeling even when they aren't saying much. There is something about your energy that makes people feel seen. And this person remembers that very clearly. In fact, I think that's part of the problem. They remember too much. They remember details they thought they would forget. They remember moments they thought weren't important. They remember your voice, your reactions, your kindness, your silence, the little things. And the more time passes, the harder it becomes for them to convince themselves that this connection was insignificant. Because every road they take somehow seems to circle back to the same realization.
They care.
More than they planned to. More than they expected to. And maybe even more than they're ready to admit. What fascinates me is that this feels like the beginning of an awakening rather than the end of a story. Because someone is standing right on the edge of a truth they've been avoiding. And as these cards continue to unfold, it feels like we're about to see what happens when that truth can no longer stay hidden. There's something beautifully different about your energy right now. I keep noticing that the people around you may not fully understand what has changed, but they can feel it. They may not have the words for it. They may not even realize why they're suddenly paying more attention. But something about you feels calmer, more settled, more at home within yourself. The Star card keeps pulling my attention toward this quiet transformation that's happening beneath the surface. It doesn't feel loud or dramatic. It feels gradual, like someone who spent a long time carrying emotional weight and is finally setting some of it down. Not because life suddenly became perfect, but because they've stopped asking life to be perfect before allowing themselves to breathe again. And honestly, I think that's one of the biggest shifts happening here. For some of you, it feels like you're no longer fighting yourself the way you once did. You're becoming softer with your own heart, more patient with your own journey, more willing to trust that not everything needs to be figured out immediately. The Queen of Cups is showing up again, and every time I look at her, I get this feeling that your intuition has been getting stronger lately. You may have noticed it yourself. Little feelings, little nudges, moments where you suddenly know something without understanding how you know it. Okay, maybe you've been ignoring those feelings at times. Most people do. But it feels like you're learning to listen more closely. Not to fear, not to anxiety, but to that quiet inner voice that seems to understand things before your mind catches up. And because of that, your energy feels incredibly magnetic. You know, people often think attraction comes from appearance or confidence alone. But that's not what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing is somebody becoming more aligned with who they truly are. And there's something incredibly attractive about authenticity. People can feel it, even if they can't explain it, even if they don't understand why they suddenly enjoy being around you more. They feel it. Judgment is creating an interesting atmosphere here because it feels like certain realizations are happening all around you, not only within yourself, within other people too. I keep getting the image of someone looking at you and realizing they've underestimated you. Someone recognizing strength they didn't see before. Someone noticing growth they weren't paying attention to. And maybe the most important realization of all, you're starting to see it too. Because for a long time, I feel like some of you measured yourselves through old wounds, through disappointments, through things that didn't work out, through chapters that left scars. But those chapters are no longer the whole story. They may still exist. They may still matter. But they don't define the person you've become. Oh my God, that's actually what feels so powerful here. You're beginning to separate your identity from your pain. And when that happens, everything changes. The way you love changes. The way you communicate changes. The way you carry yourself changes. Even the opportunities that find their way toward you begin to change. Temperance is sitting quietly beside all of this, almost like a gentle reminder that healing rarely happens all at once. It happens in layers, in conversations, in moments of forgiveness, in mornings that feel a little lighter than they used to, in nights where your mind finally becomes quiet enough to rest. And while this process continues, there's a sense that people around you are witnessing it.
Some are inspired by it. Some are curious about it. Some may even feel challenged by it.
Because growth has a funny way of making other people reflect on their own lives. I keep feeling that your energy is becoming harder to ignore. Not because you're demanding attention, not because you're chasing validation, but because you're naturally stepping into a version of yourself that feels more genuine, more balanced, more connected. And somewhere in the background, there are eyes noticing this transformation far more than you realize. Someone is paying attention. Someone is observing these changes. Someone is trying to understand why your presence feels different than it did before. What starts as curiosity may be growing into something else entirely. And as these cards continue unfolding, It feels like we're about to see exactly who's been watching and why they can't seem to look away. There's an interesting shift happening around you because not everyone is simply admiring this growth from a distance.
Some people are studying it,
Watching it, trying to figure it out. And honestly, I don't think all of them understand why they're so focused. The Page of Swords keeps catching my attention in a very specific way. It feels like somebody checking in more often than they need to. Looking at your profile, looking at your updates, asking subtle questions through mutual friends, paying attention to things they pretend don't matter. You may never hear their name. You may never know how often they think about you. But it feels like your presence has become something they keep returning to, almost unconsciously, almost automatically. And the strange part is that this doesn't feel entirely negative. For some of you, it feels like genuine curiosity. For others, it feels like fascination. For others, well, it feels a little more complicated than that. Because I keep seeing someone trying to understand how you've managed to become so comfortable in your own energy, how you've managed to keep moving forward, how you've managed to find peace after things that should have broken you. And that question seems to be following them around. The Seven of Swords creates a different atmosphere. Not dangerous, not dramatic, just hidden, very hidden. Like somebody who doesn't want their attention to be noticed. Somebody who prefers observing over speaking. Someone who gathers information quietly while revealing very little about themselves. You know, there are people who ask direct questions. And there are people who sit back and watch everything unfold. This feels more like the second type. I keep getting the image of someone scrolling through old photos, revisiting old conversations, checking things they already checked before. Not because they're learning something new, because they're looking for a feeling, trying to understand why your energy keeps pulling them back. Oh my God. For some of you, I think this person has convinced themselves multiple times that they're finished thinking about you. And every single time, something happens that brings your name back into their mind. A song, a memory, a location, a random conversation, something small, something ordinary. Yet somehow, it leads right back to you. The Devil card is sitting here, and what catches my attention is an obsession in the dramatic sense people often imagine. It's fixation. The kind of fixation that develops when somebody cannot fully understand why they're so affected by another person. They tell themselves they don't care, yet they keep paying attention. They tell themselves they're moving on, yet they continue checking. They tell themselves you've become irrelevant, yet somehow you're still occupying space in their thoughts. That's what feels important here. Because whenever someone spends that much energy watching another person's life, there's usually a deeper reason underneath it. And I think part of that reason is admiration. Part of it is attraction. Part of it is confusion. But if I'm being honest, part of it feels like envy too. Not necessarily because of what you own. Not because of your finances. Not because of your status.
It feels more personal than that.
It's almost like they're jealous of your emotional freedom, jealous of your ability to keep growing, jealous of your ability to become softer without becoming weaker. And that's something they may not fully admit, even to themselves. The Five of Swords creates an emotional tension around this person. I keep feeling an internal battle happening. One side wants to let go. One side wants to keep watching. One side wants to move forward. One side keeps looking back.
It's almost exhausting.
Because the more they focus on you, the more they're forced to confront their own emotions, their own regrets, their own unanswered questions. And that's not always comfortable. Especially when somebody has spent a long time avoiding those conversations with themselves. What fascinates me is that this energy feels increasingly difficult for them to maintain. Keeping feelings hidden requires effort. Pretending not to care requires effort. Acting unaffected requires effort. And eventually people get tired. Eventually masks become heavy. Eventually curiosity turns into something that demands acknowledgement. Because the longer they observe from the shadows, the harder it becomes to ignore what they're actually feeling. And what I'm starting to see here is someone reaching a point where simply watching may no longer feel like enough. What makes this situation so complicated is that their feelings are no longer the confusing part. The feelings are actually becoming very clear. It's the risk that comes with those feelings that's making them hesitate. Because once someone reaches a certain point emotionally, they realize they can't go backward anymore. They can stay silent. They can delay. They can overthink. But they can't unknow what they know. And that's exactly what I'm feeling here. The Knight of Cups keeps appearing almost like someone standing outside a door, gathering the courage to knock. Not because they don't want to step forward, because they care about what happens after they do. You know, when people approach something casually, they're not usually nervous. They don't rehearse conversations in their head. They don't spend hours wondering how they'll be received. They don't analyze every possible outcome. This person does. And I think the reason is simple. You matter to them. A lot. More than they expected. More than they planned for. More than they may be comfortable admitting. Oh my God. I keep seeing someone going back and forth with themselves. One moment they're convinced they should say something. The next moment they're talking themselves out of it. One day they're imagining reaching out. The next day they're convincing themselves they should wait. And this cycle just keeps repeating. Not because they lack feelings. Because the feelings have become significant enough to make them nervous. The Lover's card creates such a beautiful but vulnerable energy here. I don't see someone questioning whether they're drawn to you. I see someone questioning whether they can trust themselves enough to take the next step. There's a difference. Because attraction is easy. Admiration is easy. Even longing can be easy. What becomes difficult is allowing yourself to be seen. Allowing yourself to care openly. Allowing another person to know they have the power to affect your heart. That's where this person seems to be struggling. For some of you, they may appear calm on the outside, collected, stable, maybe even detached. But underneath that exterior, there is far more emotion than they're showing. The King of Cups keeps giving me the feeling of somebody trying very hard to stay composed. Very hard. Almost too hard. Like they've spent years learning how to control their emotions. Learning how to appear strong. Learning how to avoid vulnerability whenever possible. Yet every time they think about you, those walls become harder to maintain. Because you seem to reach parts of them that other people don't. Parts they normally keep protected. Parts they don't show very often. And honestly, that can be terrifying. Especially for someone who isn't used to feeling this exposed emotionally. The Moon card is creating this atmosphere where so much remains unspoken. Not because the emotions aren't there. Because they are. Very much so. It's almost like two conversations are happening simultaneously. One conversation exists inside their heart. The other exists in the real world. And those two conversations haven't fully met each other yet. Their heart knows exactly what it feels. Their words are still trying to catch up. I keep getting the feeling that this person isn't afraid of loving you. That's not what scares them. What scares them is the possibility of losing something they haven't fully had the chance to experience yet. The possibility of hearing no. The possibility that your feelings might not match theirs. The possibility that timing could be different than they hoped. Those fears seem to be sitting quietly beneath the surface. And because of that, they're moving much more carefully than someone who is only interested in a temporary connection. The strange thing is that every attempt to protect themselves seems to pull them deeper into these emotions. Every effort to remain logical leads back to the same place. Every attempt to maintain distance somehow makes them more aware of what they're feeling. And while they're trying to decide whether it's safe to open their heart, something else is beginning to shift around them. Because the longer they wait, the more they're starting to realize they may not be the only person noticing how special you truly are. That realization seems to be creating a sense of urgency that wasn't there before. Not panic, not desperation, just awareness. Awareness that life keeps moving. Awareness that opportunities don't always wait forever. Awareness that people notice what is valuable. And what fascinates me is that this reading no longer feels centered around somebody else's decision. The energy has shifted. The focus is moving toward you. The Queen of Cups is sitting here with such quiet confidence, and every time I look at her, I get the feeling of someone who has stopped searching for validation outside of themselves. Not because they stopped caring, because they finally understand their own worth. There's a difference. You know, there comes a point in healing where you stop asking, why didn't they choose me? And you begin asking, do I even want this person in my life? That's a very different question. A much more powerful question. And I keep feeling that some of you have been arriving at that place little by little, without forcing it, without announcing it, without trying to prove anything. You've simply been growing, learning, healing, creating a life that feels more aligned with who you are. And because of that, something interesting is happening. People are noticing. Not only one person, multiple people. The Lover's card appears again, but the energy feels different here. Earlier, it felt connected to someone recognizing their feelings. Here, it feels connected to possibilities, choices, different paths opening simultaneously. For some of you, this may show up as multiple romantic interests. For others, it may simply be different forms of emotional connection becoming available. But either way, I don't get the feeling of scarcity. I don't get the feeling of waiting. I don't get the feeling of chasing. I get the feeling of attraction. Not attraction in the physical sense alone. Attraction in the energetic sense. The kind that naturally happens when somebody becomes comfortable within themselves. Oh my God. I think that's what surprises certain people the most. Because there may have been a time when they assumed you would always be available. Always waiting. Always hoping. Always standing in the same place. But people evolve. Hearts evolve. Lives evolve. And while they've been sorting through their own emotions, you've been continuing your journey. The Judgment card creates this powerful feeling of awakening. Not only for the person we've been talking about, for everyone involved. It's almost like the truth can no longer be ignored. The truth about what this connection means. The truth about how much you've grown. The truth about how many opportunities are beginning to surround you. I keep seeing someone suddenly realizing they may not be the only person interested in your energy anymore. And that's creating a very different perspective. Because it's one thing to believe you'll always have time. It's another thing entirely to realize someone else may recognize your value too. What makes this beautiful is that none of this feels forced. The Ace of Cups feels incredibly natural. Like a door opening. Like fresh air entering a room. Like something flowing toward you instead of something you have to chase. For a long time, some of you may have felt like love required struggle. Like you had to prove yourself. Convince people. Wait for people. Carry situations longer than you should have. This energy feels different. It feels lighter. More reciprocal. More honest. And I think you're beginning to recognize that. The Ten of Cups adds this warmth that I can't ignore. Not because it promises perfection. Life is rarely perfect. Relationships are rarely perfect. But because it feels like emotional fulfillment is becoming a stronger priority than emotional confusion. You're becoming less interested in uncertainty. Less interested in mixed signals. Less interested in chasing unavailable people. And more interested in connections that actually feel good. Connections that feel safe. Connections that bring peace instead of anxiety. And perhaps that's the biggest transformation of all. Because somewhere along the way, the person who was waiting to be chosen started becoming the person who chooses. The person who once questioned their value started recognizing it. The person who once looked outside themselves for answers began trusting their own heart. And that changes everything. Because as these energies continue unfolding, it feels like someone is standing at a crossroads. One path leads toward hesitation. The other leads toward action. And very soon, we're about to see which direction they're willing to take. Something tells me this story isn't finished yet. It feels like there are still words left unspoken, feelings still finding their way to the surface, and choices that haven't fully revealed themselves. For now, trust what your heart already knows. Trust the growth you've worked so hard for. Trust the peace you've been creating within yourself. Because sometimes the right people begin to notice your value the moment you stop asking them to. Thank you for spending this time with me. I always appreciate your energy, your kindness, and your presence here. Cancer, you are so important, and I can't wait to connect with you again in the next reading. Until then, keep shining, keep healing, and keep choosing yourself.
Take care. Okay. Bye-bye.